Well, welcome to the journey. My name is Kevin Polky, and I am the host of the journey. And today I have a special guest. Actually, this is our guest has been on the show before. We went back into the archives and looked back, and it was September 1st of 2019, episodes 34, when Scott Lemke, our guest for today, was on the show. And as we're going to find out, there's been a couple things that have transpired in his life since then. But
Yeah.
let's welcome Scott. Scott, thank you for being here. I know that this is one of those days, the first potentially first big snow of the well, not only of the year of 2024, but of the winter of 23-24 in the greater Rockford area. And I know that you've been busy since early this morning getting ready for that and trying to prepare for that. But and it happens to be your birthday. So
Yes.
happy birthday, and thanks for spending a little bit of your birthday with us today. So Scott, well, and just to I want to have you back to the show, and I just wanted to kind of, re-engage our audience to who you are, where were you born, raised, where did you grow up, and all that, and but before we jump into all that, when Scott has the opportunity to have fun, what do you do for fun?
I started racing again.
Oh,
So my 5-year anniversary, my 5-year sober anniversary, I had talked to Kenzie, my daughter, and she's got basketball and volleyball and her athletics and stuff. But I wanted to do something for my 5-year, and she wanted to see me racing again. And so she said, "Do something for yourself." So I got a hold of some old friends, Bone, who's Jeff Larson, who I raced with for 20 years before the alcohol took over. And him and I got a car together, and I said, I'm just going to be low key. I'm not going to do too much. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of money. And him and I got a car from East Moline, and we raced about 20, 24 races that first year.
okay.
And so we did all right. It's a whole different ballgame than what it was before, and I haven't been in a race car in 20 years. So we won some heat races, won some B mains. We got faster as the year went on, and then I got the bug again. So I'm actually at the shop right now because I've been plowing and salting all morning, and my race car, my new one, is sitting right next to me to the left hand side. So much for not getting too back into it, not spending a bunch of money.
Sure, sure. And for our audience, what type of there's a lot of different types of racing that are out there. What kind of model, what kind of racing are you doing? And maybe kind of explain a little bit of that.
It's a IMCA dirt modified. So
Okay.
you run 604 crates. Everything around here now is IMCA. There's stock rules for it. It's a 604 crate. You got to have stock stub. It's it's just they're trying to keep the price down. It doesn't work because everybody's trying to outdo each other. But it's a really neat class because everybody's supposed to be even. So it goes back to the driver, a lot to the driver. Instead of having big motors and spend a bunch of money on the bigger motors like we used to, and having a whole bunch of horsepower, and that horsepower helped you out and took away some of the driving. These are all about the driver, and the tires are slicker, but it's an IMC open wheel modified. They're from Davenport, Dubuque, Darlington, Wisconsin, East Moline. So it's all over the Iowa and Wisconsin area. There's nothing local around Rockford, but um, it's a it's a blast. So
No,
it's a lot of fun.
nice, good deal. So and you, I'm sorry, and you got back into racing how long ago? When your daughter was kind of encouraging to get back into it?
So I got back into racing. So it'd be my 5-year anniversary. So it'd be last year. It'd be 2020. Well, 2022 is when I got back in it.
Gotcha.
Um, and then that was the first time I've stepped in a race car since 2000, 2008, 2009. So it was something to get used to again.
I bet. I bet. So Scott, why don't you kind of just bring us up to speed a little bit about for the audience to kind of where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to high school? What was life like growing up? And kind of give us a little bit of your backstory, family wise and stuff like that.
So I'm from Rockford, Illinois. I have a sister and a brother. They're both older than I am. My brother's 6 years older. My sister is, I believe 9 years older than I am. We grew up in Rockford, right outside New Milford. I spent a lot of time with my grandma and grandpa growing up, um, and a lot of athletics, a lot of sports, a lot of racing. As the first episode, you and I talked about, my mom raced at the Speedway in 79, 80, 81.
Mm.
So it was we were tight, but family issues and our father left us at a real young age. So mom was raising three kids by herself. Um, and we were doing the best we could. It was on the struggle bus for a long time. Mom was trying to get us out of that, and we were doing a lot as kids. We were trying to help mom out, and it was a long road watching her go through what she went through,
Mm.
and it affected us more than what we thought, especially me. I had a hard time dealing with it.
Mm.
So, but just a normal growing up, we just a lot of wrestling, football, baseball, basketball, and then going down to grandma's, a lot of fishing, motorcycles, going to the races, and going camping with grandma and grandpa. That's where I
Mm.
spent most of my time, was down there right outside New Melford. They had a little 3-acre gentleman farm.
Mm.
So grandma and grandpa built a house, and that's where they lived till they both passed away.
Gotcha. It's interesting, and I don't know if this was the impact that you had, but I was just recently talking to someone about you know, later in life, recognizing the impact of some of his experiences growing up. And one of the things that he talked about is certain setbacks that he had early on that he kind of just compartmentalized, just kind of like boxed them up and didn't really deal with them because he felt like his parent was going through more than he was, and so he
Yeah.
was trying to be there to support his parent. And so then it just, that incident, that situation, that setback, it just got put into a box and never really got looked at until decades later, when as we talk about it in counseling, it had a cumulative effect of some of these traumas, and the box wasn't strong enough to hold it in anymore.
Right. And that's exactly true. And you're trying to, a lot of the times I was just trying to stay out of the way, trying to make sure that mom wasn't worried about me. And I was just trying to stay out of the way. And as time went on, and I wasn't dealing with, Lyle leaving, and that was my father, Lyle leaving, and trying just to find my own path and not follow my brother, and not follow my sister, and not dealing with anything. As I got older, it got worse. And fast forward, 30 years, and me going through what I went through with the alcohol and the addiction, I'm seeing a little bit of that in my daughter now. That, I mean, I've spent 6 years trying to make up for what I've done in the past, and some of it I've done wrong. Some of it I tried to do with money. Some of it I tried to do, just trying to spoil her rotten and give her things, which is the wrong thing to do. But the best part of it is that now I'm seeing what she's going through as a freshman in high school, and I'm seeing the signs of it that I went through. So getting her through that in her own journey and her own path has helped a lot. And being sober and being a father and being there for her and being able to navigate through it with her has been a huge plus in her and I's relationship, to go through this together.
Sure. And I think there is, there's an element to that, and we're seeing more and more in the professional world, that people are being hired specifically in the front line who have their own who've had their own life experiences. They may not necessarily have the degrees, but or the licensure or whatever, but they have life experience that allows, if done correctly, allows them to have a certain level of empathy in those settings, and they can see more. Now, sometimes, right, life experience, it causes the opposite to happen, right? We're so hyper vigilant and hypersensitive that we don't want our child to go through the same experience we did, that we bubble wrap them so tight that they can't breathe, and it backfires on us.
Right.
But if we are walking our own journey and being cognizant of everything that's happening, we can walk with them and um, not have to dictate what their journey is. So I think that it all had as we've said before, this we're able to utilize our experiences to help other people. Um, that is, I think, then worth some of the setbacks and the pain that we've gone through.
Right. But you still have to let them fail.
Yep.
That's because I early on I had her in the bubble wrap, and it got to the point where I wasn't doing her any justice and I wasn't doing her any good. So that's the hard part, because in sobriety they tell you it's one day at a time and it's 1 hour at a time, and you're focused on staying sober. 2 3 years into it, now you got to start dealing with your emotions, and you got to start dealing with everything that goes along with it. They don't tell you that in the beginning. They
Yep.
kind of just that kind of just comes upon itself. And for me, I mean, before I wasn't very sensitive. I mean, I was sensitive to a point, but as I got sober and as my family tells me, I grew more and more and more sensitive to everything around me, and to especially my daughter. But to when we talk about my past or talk about anything else, I was sensitive to it. 5 years, come 5 years, that started to go away a little bit, because you start thinking to yourself, I've done my time. I've done everything. I've made my amends. I have, paid back everybody that I owed money to. I've stood face to face with the people that I lied to and that I wronged. And they said what they had to say. Some were good, some, you left there thinking I could have done without that. But you got to think of their point of view too. They needed that.
Mhm.
So they needed to get that off their chest so they can move on and they can move forward, especially with family. So yes, you're completely right when you say you put them in a bubble, but you've got to let them fail. You've got to
Mhm.
let them walk their own path, because they still have to learn their life lessons, and not just what you tell them,
Right.
because they're not learning anything. They're just hearing what you say. And it makes them better people in the end too. It makes them stronger.
Yeah, no, 100%. And yes, we can definitely learn vicariously, right? Learn through someone else's experience, but those lessons, though valuable, may not necessarily be those life-changing things that we hang on to. And that, ends up being, like you said, you know, our own setbacks, our own mistakes that we have to then figure out how do we correct and how do we move through those things. Ultimately, that's all part of the developing and growing process. It's interesting, right? As a as a father, somehow we figure out that when the toddler is learning how to walk, we somehow are accept the fact that they're going to stumble and fall and they're not going to get it right
Right.
correctly. And then and then it moves to, as they're learning to tie their shoes, we have to choose not to tie it for them, even though it'd be faster, it'd be more effective, it would be more efficient. Or we're going to still be tying their shoes when they're 18 years old. So I mean, I think, when they're babies and toddlers, we somehow give ourselves permission to support and just create space for them as they get older, either because of our own stuff or because, like you say, uh, not wanting them to be in pain. We end up stepping in there and sometimes delay the development process or the growth process.
Right. And that could be more true. And that's a lot of what we're going to now, is the maturity level of it, and maturing a little bit slower, due to the fact that I was trying to protect her from everything. But as a freshman, she's maturing above her years, and I mean, she's turning into just a great young lady. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't, especially on my part, because I had to deal with trying to get her there, but taking my lumps as well, for her to be able to do that and for her to be able to move on. So it's it's a hard spot being there's no book, there's no nothing to tell you how to do it or when to do it or how to make it. For them to cry is the worst thing in the world, and I never want it to happen. I try to fix it, but at times it's just, you got to step back and let them cry.
Mhm.
And it's brutal, but I'm still dealing with my own stuff and trying to let her deal with hers. And you've gotta find a fine line where it's not smothering and you're not being a helicopter dad, as well as kind of staying 10 feet back and making sure she's protected.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I think, I think it definitely is because of, like you said, if there was a book written about it, it'd be outdated by the time we got the copy of it. And,
Yes, it would. Yes.
and it would have been written for some other child that isn't yours because your child, Mackenzie, is she's her own person, and so I think it's really more about that art of parenting than it ever is a science of parenting. So yeah, no, I'm with you. My oldest will be 28 next month, and my youngest will be is 25 and a half, and yes, that is it's a much, I used to say, and I still believe this, is that every stage is the best stage, because it was just, because it was always just something new and exciting to be able to be with them and watch them grow. And now that they're starting their own families and they have careers and stuff like that, it's and so now Diane and I, we're over the last couple of years we're starting a life that prior to this had been always focused on on the kids, and now it is for us to have some of our own adventures. So that's been another phase to go through. So
Yeah, exactly right. And we're on the basketball stage right now.
okay.
So she's committed 100%. She's doing amazing. She's finding her own showcases, finding her own path and doing it on her own. And I'm the lucky one that gets to be along for the ride. So
Sure.
that travel time to Wisconsin and Iowa and doing the showcases with her, I could care less what happens at the showcases. It's that one-on-one time her and I get to travel and spend the night in a hotel and do jack around and have a great time together and make memories that we'll never have again.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's dad's part of it.
yeah.
But it's always nice to see her do well, which she's been doing. Like I said, she puts the work in. So, and she's determined and she's focused. So I couldn't ask for anything more having that time with her. So we're in the basketball stage. I'm sure we're going to go into some other stages, but I'm just kind of enjoying this ride right now.
Nice, good deal. So Scott, kind of tell, you now you're coming up on 6 years of sobriety, right? And I know when we talked a few years ago, you talked about just you just kind of getting into um recovery, and had gone back and forth with some attempting to be substance free, but it switched when we talked about recovery. And for you, what would you say for individuals that may not be familiar with the difference between someone being substance free from whatever it is, alcohol, drugs, whatever that is, um, or we call it sobriety, to what we refer to as recovery? How would you describe today, 6 years into it, how would you describe the difference?
The biggest difference between staying clean and sobriety and recovery is you have to deal with your emotions. Getting sober, you can't drink, you can't do drugs, you got to change your lifestyle. And after time, when you get used to it and you're focused on something else, it doesn't go away, but it comes a little easier. The longer it goes, you're focused on whether it's work, whether it's your daughter, your son, whatever you're focused on, it becomes something that you still think about in the back of your head, but you're not focused on it. Recovery, you're dealing with your own emotions, you're dealing with what's making you happy, what makes you happy. You've put it aside for so long that you don't know how to do it. And it's getting back into being able to go out to a restaurant and being around people and being with people surrounding you and being able to go to have dinner with family and being around alcohol and the social part of it, which I didn't think was going to be as hard as it was. The social aspect to put yourself back out into basically, living again. That to me, the recovery part there was that was the hardest part for me because I was uncomfortable being out in front of people. I didn't know who I was going to run into. I didn't know if they were going to be mad, going to be happy, because you got 90% of the people, of course, want you to be sober and recover and to be the best you can be. However, there's that 10% that are waiting for you to fail. They're waiting for you to, so they can say, I told you so, or tell somebody else they told them so. So dealing with your emotions on that part of it, dealing with yourself and what makes you happy, that you don't always have to do everything for your daughter or your wife or your family. You can take time to actually say no to something. No, I can't do it. I've got to go do something else. Or you're not, for me, I was working 15, 16 hours a day and then going to help family or going to do this or going to do that. So I was constantly busy or running Kens everywhere. So, but there come a point where I was running myself ragged and I had to deal with me, which the recovery part of me, what makes me happy? What do I want to do with my life? How do I want to help other people that have the same problem that I do? And that part of it was huge. And just being somebody that I don't know, I don't know the perfect word for it, but just putting yourself back in a social atmosphere that's not with booze, not with alcohol, or not with drugs, and being comfortable and being able to talk to people again and having something to talk about. It's like being a kid all over again and
Mhm.
trying to grow up. And, for a lot of years, I wasn't. I was immature and I was doing stupid stuff. So you actually have to kind of recreate yourself into, I'm an adult now. And for me, that was the scariest thing in the world. I went 45 years without having to be an adult. But now it's the best thing ever. It's a sense of accomplishment for me. And as you and I have talked before, I go to bed every night. Every when I wake up, I've accomplished something. Not a lot of people can say that. I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs, and I'm trying to be a better person than I was yesterday. And to find racing again, to have my daughter a part of that, to have Elise a part of that, and to I didn't want to push it on people when I was racing. I kind of wanted just to have kind of feel it out. But I do talk a lot about my sobriety on my racing page. And people reach out to me with their struggles and telling me that they've celebrated 6 months or a month or 2 months. And I've I tell them, if you ever need me, I'm here. And it's people I've never met. The coolest thing, Kevin, and this was I bought the car at East Moline and I went to Dubuque Nationals, and that was in 22. And I didn't want to go because I wasn't ready, but I did anyway. And I got in the car and we missed the show on Friday night, missed the show on Saturday, and then Sunday or Thursday night, sorry. Thursday night missed the show, Friday night missed the show, Saturday night we made the show. And we're sitting in the camper and it was me, my daughter, and Elise and my brother, and we were sitting in there and a guy knocks on the door. And I opened the camper door and somebody I've never met before, somebody I've never seen before. I had done a interview Friday for the television because there was broadcasted. And the guy that does the broadcasting knew who I was from Princeton 20 years ago. And he put it on. I talked about my sobriety. And the guy seen the video on Friday and came to my door and he was a fan and he was just there. And he said, that was inspiring. I'm 3 weeks sober, and I hope I can do the same thing that you're doing. And do you mind if I contact you in the future? I could have that there, and especially with the family being there, that was the best part of me bringing my sobriety to life in racing.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think I part of an aspect of your story, as you've told me, different times, is that, substance and alcohol was part of it. And then as you recreated your life, rediscovered your life, or discovered your life, right? Now that you have been uh in recovery for this amount of time, that's also part of the story. And like you said, we never know who's going to be listening. We never know who's going to need to hear that part of the story. And not just, the wins, but also the struggles. And like you
Yeah.
were saying earlier about learning how to, because the selling point of sobriety is that your life is going to be better, right? And because if we said your life is going to be shittier, who would sign up? That no
Right.
no one's going to sign up. And it's true. Life is better when you're substance free. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easier, though.
No,
Yeah.
it's yeah, you couldn't have said that better because my coping mechanism for I think it was going into the 3rd year, if I couldn't deal with something, I went to sleep. So the struggles that you did, I mean, it's 5 o'clock at night and it's just you can't control it. So you give it to your higher power. For mine, it's God. And I just gave it to God. I said, you got to deal with this because I can't.
Mhm.
It's not, I don't know how. I'm not capable right now of doing it. So the struggle is real. The struggle does not go away, but it gets easier as you go along, and you find different areas on how to cope with it. And I watch a lot of your journeys, which help me, and that's why I've been on the road that I've been doing, trying to help as many people as I can and get the word out that the struggle for the and so for me, and I've learned this in the last 6 years, and it's my thought and my opinion only. The drugs and the alcohol are a part of a horrible disease, and it's debilitating, and I get it. But there's something inside of you that is not right. There's something that happened to you, whether it's mentally, physically, I mean, emotionally, whatever, that you have to use that to deaden the pain or to weaken what you're dealing with so you can make it a day, so you can, get to the next day so you don't have to think about it or deal with that. Once mentally I got right and mentally I dealt with all the stuff that I dealt with as a kid and growing up and through my teen years and through my 20s and 30s, I finally realized I was masking. I was not coping with it. And I was using the drugs and alcohol so I'd forget everything, which made it worse. And I don't say you should do any of that. But once I dealt mentally with what I needed to, it got easier and it made me realize that the drugs and alcohol, yes, they're a problem and they're a disease, and you keep using it to do it, and after a while it becomes basically a habit, and that's why it is what it is. But you have to sit back and think, what happened to me? Well, how can I deal with me to help me, not help somebody else, not to figure out why mom and dad are mad at me or why this person's mad at me. Figure out what's going to make you happy because that's going to make them happy, and then it just gets easier. And that's the hugest struggle that I went through.
Well, and I know, especially for people who've wrestled with the idea of gone back and forth with, because most people who have been using for a given amount of time and have been identified or identify as being an addict or alcoholic, which is a more of a self-imposed label, right? Um,
Right.
that they have, it's kind of like if you don't want to be told what to do, you don't want to go to certain institutions, right? You don't want to go to church, you don't want to go to some place of worship, you don't want to go to AA, you don't want to do, because you don't want to be told what to do, because I want to do it my way. the, I think the beautiful thing about the 12 steps, and specifically AA, but the 12 steps, is there's only one time in all those steps that it ever mentions alcohol. And that's
Hmm.
that's the first step. The rest of it is about figuring out how to start living life on life terms.
Yeah.
All the things that you talked about, right? All the things, the first three steps, we're just trying to figure out, one, I'm not God, that something else is, and now I'm turning my will and my life, my thinking and my actions over to something bigger than myself. That's just the first three steps. and
Right.
then and then we get to, in the fourth and fifth step, start trying to put in order the chaos of what I've done or what's been done to me in the fourth and fifth step. But there's still more. more to go on, identifying what are my character defects. Well, I know for me, when I talk about, Campbell's work of the hero's journey, which I've been doing a deeper dive into just recently, that is not only is that the fourth and fifth step, but that's also when we start looking at character, we call them character defects, and I think we can still be renewed from those character defects, but we have to face what is chasing us in the cave. We have to
Yeah.
face, what we may have been ignoring or we've been projecting onto someone else. If that is a tendency to people please, a desire to get affirmation or validation from others, if that is a fear of failure, or whatever those things are, that time period when we're in that vulnerable state in the cave or the dark night of the soul, that's when we have to face those things. And we're not going to know what to necessarily do, because that if we knew what to do, then they wouldn't be a problem. if we
Correct.
if we knew how to handle, a fear of failure, or whatever it may be, then it wouldn't be an issue because we would already be doing it. It would just be,
Right.
choosing to do it. But, there is that element of, like you said, putting yourself out there, learning how to socialize without the a substance to help lubricate the social, the social environment, right?
Right.
Or making it easier, or putting yourself out there in the idea of racing again, and there's a vulnerability that you haven't been on the track in 20 years. Well, what if I suck? Well, guess what? You're probably gonna suck. You're
A-
gonna
And you couldn't have put that better because the first 2 nights out in the car, we sucked. And I mean, my quarter entry was bad. Anyway, that's some things that people won't understand. But yeah, it was getting back in the car again. I was happy to be in the car, but I was terrible. And, you get out of the car, and that was the best part for me, is because it's like, okay, my quarter entry was terrible. Coming out, I'm not coming out like I want to. So let's fix the car to my driving style. No, you stop being you and get out of your way and start going back to what you know and what makes you happy. And you've done this before. You've won how many championships? You've won how many races? It's not the car's fault. It's not, somebody else's fault. It's not your crew chief's fault. Look in the mirror and figure out what you're doing wrong and fix it. And we left the car alone, and I fixed me. And then, of course, Ken showed up on Saturday. The whole family was there on Saturday. And thankfully, I made the show on Saturday. So that was cool. But yeah, and that for racing for me takes it right back to recovery. You have to deal with you. It's not your fault. It's not, I can't blame Kevin for what I'm dealing with because I don't know how to. That's not your fault. That's me because I didn't ask the question. It's not somebody else's fault that I don't know how to socialize out in public anymore. That's my fault because I didn't stop and say, I should have done this earlier. I should have put myself out there. I should have leaned on my wife, Elise, to put myself in a position to help me through that and to be by my side. I didn't do that. I just shut down. So that's not everybody else's fault. That's my fault. And as you had talked about before about diving down the cave, the hero's cave, when you deal with your own stuff and you realize I was being an ass, so why was I being an ass? It's just not, well, I'm not going to be I'm not going to be a jerk today. It's not like that. Why were you being a jerk? Figure that part out of it out so you can fix it and then move forward and don't do it again. You don't put yourself in the spot. I've I've put myself out in positions to fail just so I know how to get out of it, just so I know that I'm going to climb back out of this again. I learned from it. I'm not going to put myself in that position again. So the next time I face something, I'm better equipped to deal with it. I have more tools in my box to be able to fix that. And there's a lot of things I can fix anything on my race car. But there's a lot of things with my daughter, with Elise, with a lot of my family members, I can't fix with tools. And that bothered me for a long time, but it's not my fault. It's not something it's not something I can fix. They've got to be able to fix themselves in order for us to get over what we're dealing with.
I'm doing some work right now on, and I've been talking about it for a long time, about the idea that sport, in all the different types of sports, right? Regardless if it's racing, if it's wrestling, football, whatever sport it is, doesn't really matter. Some type of activity, or the arts, are really just a metaphor for life. It's an opportunity for us to address things that we wouldn't necessarily know how to address in everyday life. But once we metaphorically, you know, once we can see that, in this case, racing, right? When you just said something, I think I want to go back and really stress that. When you got out of that first weekend of being back in the car, and the first tendency is, let's fix the car to adapt to make it easier for me to for getting back onto the track. And then somewhere along the line, right, you paused and said, no, it's not the car, it's not the crew, it's not the conditions. I have to get familiar again. I have to fix whatever that is me getting in the way, right? and
Right.
and so in that, metaphorically, is life, right? That's life. That it isn't about someone not accepting your amends. It's about you doing your part of the street to make the amends. What they do with it, that's up to them,
Right.
right? And that, I mean, and that isn't trying to be cold about that. It's just about going, where does the responsibility lie? The responsibility lies on your side of the street to clean up your side. And if it happens to model or motivate someone else to clean their side up, cool. But you can't control that part. And
Right.
you that will never know. So I'm interested using that idea, right? So you started back racing in 22, and you raced in 22. Then you obviously were racing in 23.
Yeah.
Um when when did you when did you notice, was there a time period either in 22 or in 23, when you were in the car, that there was a flow again? There was that you got a glimpse of it being in a flow, and you were able to kind of get out of Scott's way.
Yes. I can tell you the race and I can tell you when it happened.
Okay, okay.
We had four races in 22. It was at the end of the year, and then we raced all at 23. And we were at Davenport, and so I raced 25 times last year, and we were on race 12. And we were at Davenport, and we'd been second, third. We'd been, fluctuating the heat races, second, third, and fourth. And then the features, we were 10th, 11th, 12th. And we stayed, that's where we were consistently at. And it was the seventh race at Davenport. The car was good in hot laps, and it was good in hot laps. So we went into the heat race, and I was just tired of coming in. And my brother's been with me since day one going racing because he wants to be there for the first feature win. So he's helped me out a ton and been there supporting me in what I'm doing. But I got in the car and I told myself, I'm done making excuses. It's not the car's fault. It's not nobody else's fault. Just drive the car. If you wreck it, you wreck it. If you hit somebody else, you hit somebody else. Just stop thinking and stop worrying about everything and drive the damn car. I started sixth. I took the lead on lap 3, and when I took the lead, I put the door to somebody and moved them, and then I won by half a lap. And when I come across the start finish line, my aggressiveness, being in the car, me looking for lines, me not worrying about being in the race car, racing and driving and being sideways and going through people. I wasn't worried about coming out on the other side. I wasn't worried about, what I did before. I wasn't worried about how the car's going to react. All that went away. and I just worried about getting into the corner, getting through the middle of the corner, getting out of the corner, not anything else. It was three steps, three emotions that were I'm getting in, I'm getting through, I'm getting off. The rest of the stuff I didn't care about. I didn't think about anymore. And once I did that and I got out of my own way and I just started letting the car work and I wasn't over driving the car, I wasn't doing anything that I know not to, we started winning races and we were fast. And when I came in, I knew something had happened because my brother met me in the pits as he always does. And he said, that is the first time I've seen old Scott in that car. That is the first time I've seen what I used to see 20 years ago. And it never left me because I stopped thinking. I stopped worrying about everything and over analyzing and trying to fix everything before I just said, you know what? I'm going back to the way I was. I'm just going to be me. I'm just going to drive the car. And that's when it happened. I'm sorry, I'm shaking a little bit now because it was a cool moment
Yeah.
because I didn't know if I was ever going to get back to that because we weren't good. I mean, I shouldn't say we weren't good. I wasn't what I was then, and I expect a lot of myself, and you know, I expect me to get back there sooner than I want. Just like in recovery, as we talked the first time, I was a year sober and I was waiting for everybody to come back to me, say, great job, everybody's forgiving you, and balloons everywhere. And it just doesn't happen that way.
Mhm.
You've got to put the time in. And the biggest thing for me is stop telling people stuff. Stop telling people what you're doing. Stop telling people that I'm sober, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this. They don't want to hear it because they've heard it before. Show them. Don't talk anymore. Show them. And once you show them and time goes on, you don't have to ask anybody to come back. You don't have to ask somebody to go out to dinner or whatever. They'll ask you because they'll see the improvement. They'll see what you're doing with your life, and you'll get more things not gifted to you, but more things offered to you and opportunities in front of you because you're done with the talking, you're done with blaming everybody, you're done with blaming the car or, getting out of your own way and letting the car work for you. Let yourself work for other people and just stop getting in your as you said, stop getting in your own way and just don't talk as much about what you're going to do. Show them what you're going to do, and it's I found that it's a lot easier. And I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I still make terrible mistakes. I still have character flaws, but I'm learning from them and I try to be better every day. Just like I don't drink, I don't do drugs. Every day is the same thing. I try to be better tomorrow than I was yesterday.
You know, and again, and going back to the idea, and it's similar to the arts, regardless if it's theater and acting, if it's Kenzie playing basketball, she can shoot 100 free throws a day, right? And
Right.
and no and do it with her eyes closed and make every one of them with her eyes closed. But if she gets to that line in a showcase and she starts thinking that she has to make it, there's a good possibility she's going to miss
Right.
because she's thinking about what she doesn't want to do instead of just doing what her body already knows how to do. And when you talked about that, the decision of screw it, I'm just going to race and I'm going to focus on, like you said, the you know the corner, right?
Right.
What I didn't hear you say, now maybe earlier in your career, right, 20 years ago, maybe it was a reckless screw it with the help of influence, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
That may have taken the edge off of the fear of something happen.
Right.
I imagine, though, there was a desire for acceptance and approval and validation back then too, but I think that's the hard thing that people who've experienced it, when you're trying to when you've, so to speak, climbed and had some type of mountaintop of experience, and then for whatever reasons you have fallen down and then you try to get back up again, you now are there's an element of fighting against yourself, of the
Yep.
pressure of, do I have what it takes anymore? I don't want to make a mistake. I don't. And like you said, the difference of doing this sober is that you feel everything, right? So
Yes.
so you're gonna feel, that fear and not wanting to make a mistake or trying too hard, right? And golfers, when they try too hard, right, that's when they shank the ball. That's when and I think that again is metaphorical for life. And when you think, and I know this is kind of on the spot, so if you don't have an answer, that's okay. But when you think of taking what happened in that 12th race, right, back in 23,
Right.
and then you go, okay, if that was a template for me to do life now, how would that how would that transition, regardless if it's with Elise or with Kenzie or business or whatever, how do you think, if you were able to put that into words, how might that translate into actual day-to-day life?
One step at a time. Take the first thing that's in front of you, deal with it, correct it, or finish it. Go to the second step. Don't go from 1 to 3. Don't don't have 19 things that you're doing and you don't finish any of them, or you're not dealing with any of them. Your emotions, whether it's mentally, whether it's with, work, whether whatever it is, your first goal is to conquer getting into the corner. Okay, do that. Complete that, finish it, then move on to getting through the center. So, life-wise, you know, if you start a project, finish it. If you are working on yourself and you haven't completed what you're trying to work on, don't try to fix something else that you're doing. Fix that first and then move on to getting off the corner, which is the third step, which is basically you got a straightaway. So you're doing 110 miles an hour until you go into the corner again. So one step at a time is the biggest thing, and focus on, I'm going to get in, I'm going to get through, and I'm going to get off. That's the biggest thing for me, is dealing with it as it comes to me, not as all at once, or trying to deal with the whole corner instead of just breaking it up into sections. That for me is huge. And if I could ask a huge favor of you, I would like you to repeat the part about Kenzie being at the free throw line. We are going through something right now that I think when she watches this, it's going to be huge for her, because the girl has an she works her ass off, and she's talented as hell. But practice wise, she shoots the lights out. She does what she does. She gets nervous, or I don't know if she gets anxious. I don't know what it is yet, that we're working on it. But could you repeat the thing about free throws and letting your body just do it and stop worrying about it? Because that's going to be huge for her.
So, I remember being told when I was competitive is, how you practice is how you're going to play. And it's in the practice field that you make those corrections. And using free throws as an example, right? So in that aspect of it, there's nothing interfering with her being able to make that shot in a practice arena. So as
Right.
she practices that, the basket height doesn't change, the weight of the ball doesn't change, the distance from the hoop doesn't change. And as she practices that over and over again, it goes into a muscle memory.
Right.
And her body knows exactly what to do. If she doesn't think about it, she just allows it to flow. No different than if she was studying for a test. If she puts the time into studying for the test, right, and then gets out of the way at the time of the examination, the answers will be retrieved, and she'll be able to put down the correct answer if she's put the time in, if inputted the information in. Similar to the free throw, is that the muscle memory will know exactly what to do if the Kenzie factor gets out of the way, the Scott factor
Yes.
gets out of the way. Because if Kevin thinks he has to make the shot, then Kevin's in the way.
Yes.
If Kevin can't miss, Kevin's in the way. So that interferes with what my body, what I've already prepared and trained myself to do, because nothing else has changed. The distance between the hoop hasn't changed, the weight of the ball hasn't, nothing else has changed. It's just that I've now gotten in the way because of having to make it, or can't miss, or I'm tired, or whatever bullshit I say to myself that gets in the way.
Right. And
Usually it's
that's
a
the
Yeah, usually it's
and
a have to. Yeah,
coming from dad, it gets old. But
yeah,
now that you've said it in a way better way than I ever have, and let calmer, I thank you for that.
yeah. Well, and honestly, Scott, when you were able to articulate, I mean, most people don't understand racing, right? People don't understand racing. They just think it's a car going around when you described that races can be won and lost, how you take the corner, what you
Yes.
do with the corner, because you said you break down the corner into three parts. What's the first part?
Corner entry.
So the entry,
Yep.
and then
The
handling
middle,
the middle, and
getting through
handling
the
the middle,
getting through the get corner entry, getting through the middle, and then coming off the corner.
coming off the corner. And and the reality, right, is they say that most things can be broken down into threes.
Mhm.
And if you can break the entire race down into three, right? Or
Right.
or or regardless if it's, doing a particular job of plowing or salting or whatever, and then repeat, then we probably can figure out a formula how to do a lot of things.
Yes. And
And
that's helped me huge.
yeah, yeah. And so, and because the outcome is less is less important than mastering the corner,
Hmm.
because the outcome's going to be what the outcome's going to be.
Right. You have no control over it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep. And the best part about, and I've tried to, in my own way, figure this out, but getting in entry, corner entry, getting through the middle and coming off. Once you get off the corner, whether you're on a half mile, 3/8 mile, quarter mile, you get a straightaway where you don't have to do nothing. Where all you're doing is you're just on the loud pedal and you're flat to the floor, and you're going as fast and as hard as you can, and then you do it all over again. Because you go through the quarter entry, you go through the center, you come off, then now you're on the back straightaway. So it is the coolest thing in the world that once you figure out corner entry, if your middle sucks, then you go back in and you're like, okay, we need to do this to the car, get your corner entry, get through the middle. Now we got to get off. Now, once we get off the corner, just like life, once we figure out what is troubling us, to figure that out and to deal with that, and to be able to move to go to being back in a social life, or being back with your parents, or dealing with your children, or getting your children back. For me, it's the straightaway. For you, it's sitting down in a movie with your kid, or being able to see your wife again, and spending time with, loved ones, whatever. For me, I it's helped me a ton just to be able to realize that it's not everybody else can't be wrong. You can't blame everybody for so long. Yeah, it's got to be something that you have to deal with on your own, and just, you know, you got all the time. You got time to fix it. It's not like eh, the problems are not going to go away if you don't deal with them. So the longer you go, the less you deal with it. It compounds itself, and it compounds itself, and it gets worse. If you face it, look at it, figure out what the problem is, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be way easier, and the outcome is going to be way better than you thought.
Mhm. Well, Scott, I appreciate you reaching out to me a couple weeks ago, and our conversation. And I know, we were talking about a handful of different things, and we talked about getting you back on the show, and sharing. And I think, what you were able to share about, what you learned about yourself, and then practiced it, and then put it into action. I think that is key. Like you said, our Usually our biggest obstacles are lies within us, and once we can figure out what we need to focus on and what we need to block out the distractions, then we can have that level of success. Now success isn't always that outcome. Success may be that we figured out how to be back in that flow, be back into that space where you know where we're able to feel like, okay, I'm where I need to be and how I'm doing it the way I need to do it. So Scott,
Right.
I want to thank you again for spending your birthday morning with me, and being able to share where you're at as a father, where you're at as a man, and how you're attempting to do life now, on life's terms, substance free, but most importantly, trying to just learn how to do life in recovery and life on life terms. So I appreciate
Well,
it. If
th-
anybody, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead, sir.
If anyone wanted to reach out to you or get in contact, what would be the best way to reach out to?
They can email me at SCOTTELEMKE at yahoo.com, or they can find me on Facebook and message me. I have a Lemke Racing D55 racing page, or I have Scott Lemke. It's got me and my daughter big on it. Reach out to me on Facebook. Night or day, just reach out and messenger, however they want to do it. There's always somebody listening, and if you need something or if I can help in any way, I will definitely reach out and do that.
Perfect. Well, Scott, I appreciate it again. Happy birthday. And keep on enjoying spending the time with Elise and with Kenzie. And we will be talking to you soon.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the time.
Yep. So if, as we were just talking and Scott was sharing about, first and foremost, he knew that he had to make the choice to do life substance free. And then over time, getting support, getting help through the 12 steps and starting to navigate how to do life on life's terms, more was revealed to him. And as different things happened, he was able to experience life and be able to start challenging it and not making excuses and not holding himself back. Um, this isn't just Kevin and Scott's life. This is available for all of us. But we do have to take a hard look at what we need to change in our life that may be barriers, as well as what things that we need to do to live that life on life's terms. As always, I appreciate you being here and look forward to being with you next week.